All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're diving deep to uncover the hidden structural truths about why some people succeed and, well, why others don't. We're going to be unpacking some absolutely fascinating insights from Professor Jiang Xueqin, who completely flips the script on everything we've ever been taught about achievement, society, and the rules of the game we're all playing.
You know, we naturally just assume success comes down to individual grit, hard work, and psychology. We see someone at the top and we think, oh, they just wanted it more. But today, we need to pause and look at the bigger picture. We really have to ask if there's a much larger, invisible game being played here, one where the board is basically set up long before we even roll the dice.
Let's kick things off with part 1, 3 theories of success. To start, we should probably look at the 3 mainstream theories of success that are taught in schools today. These are the golden rules of achievement you've probably heard a million times. The first one is delayed gratification. The famous marshmallow test suggests that kids who can delay gratification and regulate their emotions are much more likely to have stable, prosperous careers. You put a marshmallow in front of a 5-year-old, tell them if they wait they get 2, and boom, 50 years of tracking supposedly proves that the kids who wait end up healthier, wealthier, and out of jail. It's pitched as the ultimate test of self-control. This builds right into the second mainstream theory from Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, the growth mindset. This one argues that resilience, bouncing back from failure to try a new strategy, is the absolute ultimate divider between success and just giving up. If you fail, you don't think I'm bad at this, you think I just need a better strategy. And finally, there's deliberate practice, a concept from K. Anders Ericsson. This is where an individual uses rigorous self-assessment to constantly adjust their goals and overcome obstacles. You don't just passively play the piano for 5 hours. You meticulously identify exactly which notes you're missing and strategically fix them. The source material impartially notes that a lack of this self-assessment leads to the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's where the least capable people actually feel the most confident because they literally lack the ability to realize what they don't know. Donald Trump is cited strictly as an example here of how leaders in power can project immense confidence while lacking self-awareness. So self-assessment is key, right? Well, here is where the story takes a massive turn.
Which brings us to part 2, the causation trap.
What's really wild is that teaching these 3 traits to struggling students basically doesn't work. Schools have built entire curriculums around teaching resilience and self-control to poor students, and the macroeconomic data shows it fails. Why? Because of the causation trap. We assume getting up at 4 a.m. makes you successful, but it's often the exact reverse. Being rich and successful provides the stability that naturally causes traits like a growth mindset and self-control. We've totally mixed up the cause and the effect. If you're raised in a wealthy environment, you naturally develop resilience because you have a safety net. You naturally develop deliberate practice because you have the resources to do so.
Moving on to part 3, the parenting divide.
So, the crucial point here is that macroeconomic realities dictate parenting styles, which then program how children view the world. Rich and poor parents aren't just picking different styles out of a hat. They're responding to their material realities. Look closely at how this breaks down. The differences are stark. Rich parents use a high vocabulary and negotiate to make their kids feel safe. If a rich kid touches a hot stove, the parent explains the science of the burn so the kid feels respected. Poor parents, on the other hand, often use authoritarian commands because financial volatility prevents them from having the luxury of time or kept promises. A poor parent yells, "Don't touch that," because a hospital bill could literally bankrupt the entire family.
This context completely forces us to reevaluate the marshmallow test we discussed a minute ago. Really think about it. Is that 5-year-old just showing a lack of emotional regulation?
Absolutely not. Actually, scratch that. It's not about self-control at all. It's a rational measure of trust. A poor child eats the marshmallow immediately not because they're foolish or lack control, but because their volatile environment has rationally taught them that authority figures rarely keep their promises. If a kid is used to being told, "We'll go to McDonald's tomorrow," and tomorrow never comes because the paycheck was short, eating the marshmallow right now is the smartest, most logical thing they can possibly do.
That takes us to part 4, playing different games. These parenting divides exist because the rich and the poor are fundamentally playing entirely different games for survival. It's not a matter of who is a better parent. It's about what the environment strictly demands. For a poor parent, teaching strict obedience is actually the optimal protective strategy to ensure their child doesn't get arrested by the police or fired by an authoritarian boss. If a poor kid learns to debate and negotiate, like a rich kid is trained to do, and tries that on a hostile police officer or a strict factory boss, they aren't going to get a promotion.
They're going to get locked up or fired. Obedience is a survival shield.
The professor notes something super interesting here. He says that raising his own kids with democracy and freedom actually ostracized his family in China. This proves that straying from your social class's rigid survival strategy comes with severe social penalties. Your community expects you to raise your kids a certain way, and if you try to act like an enlightened modern parent in a poor, rigid environment, people think you've completely lost your mind.
So, for those at the bottom, achieving true social mobility requires incredibly high-risk strategies which heavily rely on positioning yourself to get lucky. You basically have 4 extreme choices: abandon your community and move far away, marry into a higher class, go to war and hope you survive to get promoted, or start a revolution. It requires an extremely individualistic, high-risk tolerance that most people simply don't have.
And this brings us to our final section, Part 5. Why societies collapse.
If social groups are so deeply locked into their respective rigid strategies, we have to ask, why do seemingly stable societies inevitably experience massive, violent resets? The source outlines a really fascinating timeline. Over generations, a wealth monopoly inevitably forces the poor into extreme debt. Because of compounding interest, this leads predictably to bodily slavery, widespread landlessness, and a population with absolutely nothing left to lose. But the poor don't usually start the fire. The match that lights the powder keg is something called elite overproduction. Hierarchy is a zero-sum game. Eventually, you end up with an excess of rich, highly educated people who expect to be in charge, but there just aren't enough thrones to sit on. They get blocked from power.
Historical revolutions are never truly the poor against the rich. They are always initiated by the have-somes, the aspirational elites, weaponizing the desperate masses against the have-a-lots. The urban elites, or the merchant class, get locked out of power by the ruling class. So they turn to the massive, indebted poor population and basically make them an offer they can't refuse.
Just neutrally observing historical patterns, leaders ranging from Julius Caesar to Mao Zedong, and even modern populists like Donald Trump, gain power by promising this ultimate game reset to a highly indebted public. It's pure game theory. The aspirational elite says, "Follow me, and I will cancel your debts, give you land, and free you." It's essentially flipping the board over when the game is undeniably rigged against them.
The source argues a really profound point here. Whether it's in 1950s democratic America or 1950s communist China, societies thrive peacefully as long as ambitious people have a genuine ladder to climb. You don't necessarily need a specific political system to have peace. You just need hope. If talented people feel they can work hard and actually move up, they'll build society rather than tear it down. Unfortunately, successful elites inevitably capture the educational and political systems to guarantee their own children stay on top. This destroys mobility and ensures the game will eventually break. They alter school admissions, hoard resources, and pull up the very ladder they themselves climbed. And when that happens, the pressure cooker starts building toward the next big reset. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look at the hierarchy around you and ask yourself a serious question. What game are you truly playing right now? Are you adopting the strategies to win within the current rules? Or are you just one of the millions feeling the squeeze, waiting for the board to be flipped? It's a pretty profound lens to view our own lives, our parenting, and the history unfolding right around us. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning the rules of the game.